The last week of the NFL regular season is finally here. Most of you are done with your championship weeks, but some of you silly little people still have your championship week this week, and we didn't forget about you. We might mock you the entire time, but we didn't forget about you, so we are here with the starts and sits from every matchup for week 18. Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. It's me, Cameron Lawrence, your host. It has been a while since I've been on. I've been trying to, duck it a little bit after Tyler knocked me out of the fantasy championship in 2 leagues. So I needed to get away, regroup. I didn't want to blow up on our podcast. I am joined by Tyler Plath. Our buddy Lucas is actually in Florida right now, closer to me than he is to Tyler for one of the few times in the last 2 years. But he is not in action this week. I don't think he'll be in action next week either, which is crazy. A little hiatus. We can finally have fun on the podcast.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
There's never a threat of him just getting angry or
drop some F-bomb. I'm just kidding. Right. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you hit those notifications because we're not stopping fantasy football content. We're going all through the playoffs. We're going through the off season. We got draft content. My guy Ty is our draft guru. He's gonna be coming at you with some mock drafts, some draft videos, prospect breakdowns.
Well, in like a week and a half, we get mock draft 1.0.
That's what we like to hear. That's what we're here for. He's already dropped, I think, 2 in our group chat between the 3 of us, so it's getting exciting. He told me Keon Coleman's going to be first overall pick, which is nuts. Go Florida State, the true national champions. Would it be Georgia if we started all of our players? But that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to waste any more time. We are going to jump into breaking down every start and sit from week 18. All right, our transition there was just crazy with the music. I don't know. It sounded crazy to me. Maybe it's good on the when you guys hear it, but we will see. We're going to start on our Saturday matchup. We will go over through these matchups too, what the playoff implications are if players are started or actually playing, because there's a lot of random stuff going on. Teams are playing for stuff. Teams are in this Pittsburgh at Baltimore game. Pittsburgh needs to win, and they need Jacksonville to lose to make the playoffs. But obviously, they're going to play full out because they play before Jacksonville, so they're they don't know if Jacksonville's going to win or lose. The Ravens, on the other hand, have locked in the number 1 overall seed. They know for sure that they're that's what they are. So Lamar Jackson is already confirmed to be sitting out in this game. There's talk that, maybe some of the other players, Odell, some of the more veterans, Gus Edwards even, might be out. Mason Rudolph, right? Is it Rudolph or who's starting for Pittsburgh? Is it Rudolph?
Yep.
Mason Rudolph. Kenny Pickett's upset about that because he's back healthy, but Mike Tomlin says we're rocking with the hot hand. I just want to start before we get into the players and just acknowledge how wild it is that Pittsburgh is 10-7 or is 9-7 right now. How crazy it is that this team, who has gone through 3 quarterbacks, all have been terrible, is again in the spot to go into the playoffs with 1 week left, is going to have a winning record once. I mean, it's just insane that they're even in this position. Tyler, is there anyone from this game that you're interested in?
Not really. You think about Baltimore with Lamar out, so I don't really have much interest for Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Odell even. Like Odell has a incentive that he could hit this week, so there's that kind of motivation that he could still play, right, as one of the wide receivers that still plays. But there's really no one on this Baltimore team with Lamar out that really is like, I feel like could do well without Lamar, if that makes sense. Like I know that Tyler Huntley, who's going to be the quarterback, has to throw the ball to somebody.
Hey, 2022 Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Tyler. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to disrespect you. No, but like that's really. I don't think there should be a Baltimore player like in your lineup this week. And then for Pittsburgh, do you ride the hot hand with George Pickens because Mason Rudolph has just kind of unlocked this offense to another level because they're actually throwing the ball downfield a little bit more? he's like the only one I would consider. Maybe, Baltimore on the ground has been fairly tough on the year. So I'm not really excited about Jalen Warren or Najee Harris. So it's really like George Pickens, and that's about it. And even then, like, I'm not forcing him into my lineup.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is just because we are going to go through a lot of teams who are going to be sitting players. If you have a Steelers player and you're like, well, it's either him or I got to play Odell, who may or may not play, you probably should go with the Steelers player just because they have something on the line. But we are saying if you do have another option, we would pivot outside of everyone except for probably George Pickens this week. This next game, there are for sure going to be a lot of people. There's a lot on the line here. It's Houston and Indianapolis. Both are win and get in for either team. The winner makes the playoffs, the loser doesn't. If they win and Jacksonville loses, whoever wins this one, they do win the AFC South. So that is huge. So both these teams are going to be going all out. CJ Stroud will play in this one. Nico Collins is a full go. Michael Pittman should be in for this one. Jonathan Taylor. Tyler, let's talk about the running back situation for Houston, because this is one where I think people are getting really excited for, or some people are still seeing this name and they're bleh. So Devin Singletary, talk to me a little bit about him.
I sneaky love Devin Singletary this week. I think he is one of the kind of spot start running backs this week that you could feel confident in. And that sounds weird because for those of you still playing in week 18 and have your championships, you're like, am I really going to start Devin Singletary in championship week? And to be completely honest, I feel like you should as a flex, because Indy has not been great against the run all year. They're still allowing the fourth most fantasy points per game the second half of the season to running backs. Devin Singletary is the guy in this backfield. And what we've seen with this Houston backfield is when they get down big or they get down early, they really do abandon the run. But Devin Singletary is still involved in the passing game enough to still be relevant. But if they're in a close game, he's going to get fed. We've seen him multiple times where he's getting 15 or more carries in a game. It's happened twice in the past 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So I think this game is going to be close. I think that bodes well for Devin Singletary then.
Yeah, it's really going to be really interesting to see what happens again next year for this Houston backfield, because it feels like Dameon Pierce is out. It feels like no matter what happens, he's not going to be the guy. But it's going to be interesting to see, do they bring back Devin Singletary? Because he's had a couple huge weeks for them down the stretch here as the starting running back. Throwing the ball for Houston, CJ Stroud, are you starting him? Are you starting Nico Collins? What are you thinking there?
I feel like you got to start Nico Collins because he is the guy in this offense, even though it is a relatively tougher matchup for Nico Collins. I am not so feeling great about CJ Stroud in this one. Like Indy has done very, very well against quarterbacks in fantasy. They're allowing, what is it, 2, 4, 6, 8, eighth fewest fantasy points the second half of the season to quarterbacks. So it's tough. You might be in a spot where you got to play him because that's the only one you got, or you've got someone else and you're like, yeah, I don't really feel great. Like if you got Derek Carr or CJ Stroud, you probably are going to go CJ Stroud. If you have if you have CJ Stroud or Baker Mayfield, you're probably going to go with CJ Stroud. So you might be in the spot where you got to play him no matter what, but it is definitely a tougher matchup for him this week.
For sure. And then Indianapolis, obviously, if you got Michael Pittman, if you got Jonathan Taylor, you're starting them. Any interest in Josh Downs this week?
No.
And that's kind of where I'm at too, right? Don't get cute with Indianapolis on this one. You start Taylor, you start Pittman. Other than that, you move on. Next, we got another AFC South matchup. We have Jacksonville at Tennessee. Huge game for Jacksonville. They win and they clinch the AFC South. And they lose. If they lose after a Pittsburgh win, that means they're out of the playoffs. So that could be really big for them. Obviously, this will be, they're playing at the same time as Houston and Indianapolis, so they're going to be playing hard no matter what, right? Because getting home field advantage in that first game is going to be huge for either of these, three teams, really. Tennessee is out of the playoffs, but let's be honest, under Mike Vrabel, again, against a AFC opponent, they're gonna be looking to cause a little ruckus here. So I think this should be another interesting matchup. Tennessee, they haven't been great all year, but at the same time, they're not the team you want to play if your season's on the line, especially in Tennessee. Jacksonville, are you starting? Let's go to this last matchup. CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence? Where do you fall on that?
See, the tough thing is if Trevor Lawrence plays, he's playing hurt, right? But at the same time, it's week 18, playoffs on the line. You got to think that Trevor Lawrence will play. And he's got the slightly better matchup, in my opinion, compared to Stroud. I kind of lean Lawrence, and I feel it feels like that can come back to bite me. It feels gross. Yeah, it feels like it's going to come back to bite me. It's going to haunt me for days, but I lean Lawrence.
Yeah. Christian Kirk has been designated to return to practice. He wants to play, but has not been cleared to play, right? He's coming off that core muscle injury. So that's something you're going to have to monitor. So let's talk about Ridley. So actually, before we get to that, let's go with an easier one. ETN's in, right? You're not questioning Travis Etienne. You're playing him. Evan Ingram, at this point, if he's your starter or not, right? If you've got Travis Kelce, well, actually, in this case, you probably don't want to start Travis Kelce, but let's say you had Sam Laporta, right? You're probably starting Sam Laporta, but if Evan Ingram's your only guy, you're starting Evan Ingram.
Right. If you got like Dalton Schultz and Evan Ingram, you're going Evan Ingram.
Yep, 100%. The question is then, okay, so no Christian Kirk, are you starting Ridley?
See, that's a tough one for me because oh man,
you don't want to.
You don't want to. You do not want to. But the thing is, it's a plus matchup for Calvin Ridley.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he scored no more than 9.3 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, the targets are there, but they're not coming in as receptions either. They're targets. Yeah. So
let me compare him real quick to the other big wide receiver in this game, DeAndre Hopkins. Who are you rolling with in this one, D-Hop or Calvin Ridley?
I would roll with D-Hop.
Okay. And then are you less likely to start Ridley if Christian Kirk is playing, or are you more likely to start Ridley?
I'm less likely.
Less likely. That's what I figured, but I didn't know if there was like a stat in there that I was missing.
I feel like Ridley is like that, like very, 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 very low end flex play that like you're scraping the barrel with, because at the same time, like with everyone that could potentially be sitting out or have a quarterback sitting out, like, Zay Flowers, right? With Lamar out, I'm probably going to play Ridley over Zay Flowers.
Yes.
Even though Zay Flowers has been the hotter hand lately.
For sure. And then Derrick Henry, last one, you're starting him?
Lucas and I talked about him, what was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
You got to go down in the flames, right?
Point,
like you got to go down with it. Like I literally wrote in my notes, like if you're still alive in the playoffs with Derrick Henry, you got to play him, because there is a good chance that he probably cost you a chance in the playoffs, because he's had 2 bad games the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. He's always going to be a dual touchdown threat, though.
Exactly. That you have to take the chance on that.
And then actually Christian Kirk real quick. If he is playing, I don't want anything to do with him. Would you start him
No, I feel
you don't know where he's at. I think
you don't know where he's at. You don't know what this offense will look like, because I mean the mystique of did my mouse die? No, it didn't. The mystique of Zay Jones even too in this offense, right? So if you've got all 4 weapons between Zay Jones, he was limited in practice yesterday. So yeah, that one might be one that you just got to like kick back and watch, because again, Trevor Lawrence may not be 100% either.
Yeah. So that's a tough one. Next one, Minnesota at Detroit. Detroit can get up to the 2 seed if they win and Philly and Dallas both lose. That is very unlikely. Philly plays New York and the Giants, and Dallas plays the Commanders. So unlikely for both to lose. If they do lose, right, they stay in the 3 seed. Minnesota, on the other hand, can get to the 7 seed, but they need a little bit of help. They need to win, and they need Green Bay, New Orleans, and Seattle to all lose, which could happen. Like let's be honest, like there is a world where that happens. But if you're a Vikings fan like me and Ty, you're not banking on it.
We're not well, and the other thing too, we're not really hoping for it because the thing is, like, if we get in as the 7th seed, we're then playing
Dallas or Detroit in Dallas or Detroit.
Right. Yeah. No thanks. No thanks.
Yep, I would agree. Minnesota, right? You've seen the injuries. Detroit's run defense is good. So Justin Jefferson, anyone outside of that you're interested in on that Minnesota offense with Nick Mullins at quarterback?
I completely forgot about Jordan Addison.
But do you still want to start him?
Well, I'll ask you. Get in front of the name game here.
Okay.
Calvin Ridley or Jordan Addison?
Ooh, I'm probably going to stick with Jordan Addison if I have to just pick between those two.
See, like that's kind of where I'm at too. So
you're
probably going to play Jordan Addison.
Yeah, if my league was still going, honestly, this week I probably would be starting Jordan Addison in the league that I did have him in. On the Detroit side, is there anyone you wouldn't start out of Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Samuel Porter, and even Jared Goff this week? Is there anyone you wouldn't start?
Literally in my notes, I have everyone. They're putting up 80 this week. So we're starting Josh Reynolds. We're starting Donovan Peoples-Jones. We're starting Khalif Raymond. I'm kidding. You're definitely not. But literally, like
the usual suspects here.
The usuals. Yeah. Like Detroit will literally put up 80 this week because they are so teed off about what happened last week in Dallas.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's a good point. So if you're a Vikings fan like us, I wouldn't be holding out hope. I would not be holding out hope. I would be ready for a smacking. And even if they do win, I feel like that's worse because then you get all excited. Then you realize, oh shoot, we need 3 other teams to lose.
Someone asked me like, "How are you feeling this week?" And I just said, "I'm duck." This is not gonna be pretty.
Yes. Next, we have an NFC South matchup. If you haven't noticed the theme, it's all divisional matchups for Week 18. It's like the NFL did this on purpose, knowing there might be playoff implications on the line. Both could win the NFC South with a win and a Tampa Bay loss. Atlanta, if they lose, is out. Or if they lose or Tampa Bay wins, they are out. New Orleans can clinch a playoff berth even if Tampa Bay wins and they win with a win plus a Seattle or a Green Bay loss. I think that's and a Green Bay loss. They can clinch with a win.
Green Bay does have the head-to-head over
with
them.
The Seattle and Green Bay loss is what I meant to put. So both are playing. They got a lot on the line. And Tyler, you wrote this in there, so I'm going to ask it to you. Can you trust Bijan this week? Is it like, can you trust Drake London? I would not trust Kyle Pitts. We don't even have to ask that one. But Bijan Robinson, and then from there, Drake London. Can you trust either of these guys this week?
I feel like you can't trust them, but Bijan feels like kind of the mindset that we've had really throughout fantasy playouts with guys like Austin Eckler and Stephon Diggs. It's like you look a fool if you bench them and then they go off for 20 and you're like, that I should have played them, right? Like you can't trust him, but you probably are still going to play him expecting the worst.
Yeah. I mean, so Bijan, right? Since week 10, he went 17. He had a bye, 27, 10, 9. This is PPR, 19. And then he, at week 15, just killed some people in that first round of the fantasy playoffs, putting up 0.4 and then goes 19-11. So you do have a high probability that he could kill you, right? We saw it with the 0.4, but most likely not going to kill you. His carries during that stretch, 22, 16, 18, 10, 7, 12, 15, right? So he's at least getting work now. Arthur Smith was like, hey, you know what? I actually like my job here because I cannot coach very well and they'll still keep me around. But I do probably need to play my best player. So I think Bijan, he feels like Derrick Henry to me, right? You got to, you're in the flames with him. You got to stick with him. Drake London, I got him behind probably Calvin Ridley and Jordan Addison. So unless you're desperate, you're not playing him. On the New Orleans side, is Kamara playing this week?
So he did not practice on Wednesday.
So something definitely to watch.
Yes, that is something to watch, most definitely.
if he doesn't, so if he plays, right, you're playing him, right? He's a guy for sure you're playing. But if he's out, would it be Jamal Williams then that fills in there,
It would be
or
Kendre Miller? Everyone's secret.
Taysom Hill maybe? So here's the question, right? If the back, whoever they decide would be the back if he's out, are you interested in all? Or are you just going, you know what, this feels like a game where Taysom Hill is going to just steal enough from whoever the backup is, and I don't want to touch it.
This team is so unpredictable. That's the thing. Like,
that's what I'm worried about. If we say start the backup,
right? Yeah, I really would not. Just some further, I guess, info about Alvin Kamara. No one knows if it's a high ankle or a low ankle sprain, but it is a sprained ankle, so that it doesn't really bode well either way, to be completely honest.
For sure. Yeah. And then Chris Olave, you're playing him if he's out there. Nobody else you should be touching from this game, really.
I know. The other name I did think about was Juwan Johnson, because he has been red hot lately. He did not practice on Wednesday. So that is one to watch. And that would be a pretty big miss for people that are needing a tight end, right? If you've got a Travis Kelce, you've got a... I'm trying to think of other players that could be just sitting this week for tight ends.
I mean, likely could potentially, just because they don't have the tight end depth. There's a lot. I mean, if you had Hawkinson,
is Kittle gonna get sick?
So Debo said starters are playing, but then they said that Brock Purdy wasn't going to play the very next day. So I don't know what's happening. CMC is for sure out of that game. Never seen that leg, so I don't know for sure. They have not said anything else. So Kittle, another one that you could watch.
Like I think if you have one of those tight ends and you're not sure if they're going to play, Juwan Johnson missing time in week 18 would be a big miss.
For sure. Next game, a very exciting game. A lot of people are going to be watching. Probably the most viewed game.
Why is this not Sunday Night Football?
The New York Jets with the New England Patriots. New England is currently in position for the 3rd overall pick, but Bill's on his way out, so he doesn't care. So I guarantee New England wins this game.
Yep.
The Jets have the 8th overall pick. You're starting Zeke, right? Because you got a feeling he's going to touch the ball a ton, right? This is his tryout for the off season of, oh, hey, look I still really got the juice. Nobody else you want to touch. I mean, that's been the way it has been for the Patriots all year long, so this should not be surprising. On the Jets side of the ball, if Brees is, I would assume Brees is going to be out there. They might try and protect him. That'd be the only thing, we don't want anything to happen in week 18. That would be the only thing. Garrett Wilson as well. You're probably going to start both of those two. Anybody else you would even think about? Maybe Conklin. Nope. If you're desperate for a tight end, you don't know. Nope. No, you're out. So he would be for me, Tyler Conklin, who has outscored Travis Kelce in the fantasy playoffs so far, would maybe potentially be a guy if you're really desperate, bottom of the barrel tight end darts ride start, but that's about it. Anything else we need to add to that matchup, or are you good moving on from that one?
Yeah, we probably spent 2 minutes too long on this matchup.
Should just said Jets versus Patriots, Zeke, Garrett Wilson, Brees. Move on. All right.
Move on. Yep.
We got actually this one matters a little bit. Tampa at Carolina, another NFC South matchup. And if Tampa wins, they win the AFC South. If they don't win, they're out of the playoffs. Baker and not Baker and Godwin. That's what you have written. But you would start Rachaad White and Mike Evans. So you're saying no Baker this week. Why no Baker?
Carolina has actually been sneaky good against quarterbacks. They're actually allowing the fewest points to quarterbacks the second half of the season. Don't know how, don't know why. And Baker, as much as we want to think that Baker is now a reliable option, he kind of showed his cracks a little bit last week. And if I'm not mistaken, he's also dealing with like a rib injury. So there's a chance that he may not even play. So
it says he missed practice, but most people who know Baker believe there is a 0% chance that he would miss this game. Just knowing it's must win, just knowing that the way Baker plays, even if it was a cracked rib or something, but he is dealing with an injury, which is important to know for him. And it goes along with Chris Godwin as well, right? If Baker's playing injured, Godwin has been iffy the second half of the season to begin with. So you're playing against a team that doesn't allow much passing. Baker's injured, you're probably not going to rely on Godwin. Evans is a must start at this point, every single week.
Yep.
Like same with Rachaad White. They've both established their matchup doesn't matter. And then for Rachaad White, Carolina's actually been playing better against the run as of late. But at the same time, it doesn't matter for Rachaad White. He's shown he could get you 30 yards rushing and still put up 18 fantasy points because of the way they use him on the field. On the Carolina side, do you trust anybody?
No, I don't. We thought that Chuba Hubbard was going to be like the only Panther to really trust, and his touches have just dropped the last 2 weeks. And I think part of it is just kind of game script and how the game's played out, right? Against Green Bay, gets 16 carries, which is still nice, but I think Green Bay had pretty much sold out to stop the run in that game. And then this past week, he only had like 11 carries. He had 4 receptions, but they are just not getting him the ball as much as they used to. And on top of that, like going up against Tampa, not the greatest matchup either. And if I'm completely honest, like I go back to my guy, Devin Singletary, like I'm playing Devin Singletary over Chuba Hubbard this week.
For sure. Yeah, it's going to be gross. Carolina does have nothing to lose for, right? They don't have their first overall pick, so they might want to try and win and disrupt Tampa in this one, but even if they're trying their best, it might not seem like they are. So
true.
That's just where they're at. We are going to take a quick break and hear from our friends at Underdog before we move on to the rest of this list. So yeah, that was a terrible transition, but I'm gonna hit the button anyways.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100.
And we're back after that fantastic transition by yours truly. We're going to start out with Cleveland at Cincinnati. What a beautiful game. Cleveland's locked into the 5 spot no matter what. They can't move up because the Ravens have the north. They can't move down because nobody can catch them where they are at. And Cincinnati has been eliminated from the playoffs. So Cleveland, there's thought, Kevin Stefanski's kind of been dodging the question. But with the way they've been injured this year, you got to imagine there's going to be no Joe Flacco. You got to imagine that, you're probably not going to see Njoku. You're probably not going to see Cooper Kupp. And you might not even see like Jerome Ford this next week, which would be just disgusting. So that would leave Jeff Driscoll and PJ Walker is what you have written down as the quarterbacks to play. So even if you have, let's say hypothetically Amari Cooper and Njoku play, but you have PJ Walker at quarterback. Are you touching either of those two?
I think Amari Cooper goes into that like Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison discussion then, because they have to throw the ball to somebody, right?
That's true.
And Njoku, you're probably playing because again, it is quite literally just those 2 guys. That is it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, though, I don't imagine they're playing this week with nothing, nothing to play for. They're playing an eliminated team, and the way Nick Chubb. They've already lost for the season. They've already lost to Deshaun Watson for the season. I got to imagine they're not in, but you never know. On the other side of the ball, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and you know what? That's about it. T. Higgins, would you start T. Higgins this week?
He's dealing with a hamstring injury.
Yeah, so they might not even push it.
I mean, you could kind of tell last play of the game against Kansas City last week, they gave him a jump ball. Guy couldn't get off the ground.
Yeah, so... Right, you're starting Chase and Mixon, but that's about it. The next game, Chicago at Green Bay. We had Mr. Justin Fields fire off a couple comments calling out the Green Bay fans, saying it's nothing to do except for watch football in Green Bay. So I expect the fans to be loud calling out the city of Green Bay. Green Bay is in with a win or needs a Seattle and Minnesota loss plus a New Orleans or Tampa Bay loss to make it in. So pretty much they're hoping for a win to make it into the playoffs. Chicago, right? They've already locked up the number 1 seed. And they got a whole bunch of guys on this team that are, this is their tryout, right? This is the tryout for Eberflus. This is the tryout for Fields for next year. DJ Moore's been on a tear as of late, so I'm sure he wants to show up. Cole Kmet, even their running backs. So Ty, are you confident with I mentioned Fields, Moore, and Kmet. Are you confident in Khalil Herbert then this week too to go along with those three, or how you feeling about him?
I feel like you have no choice but to play Khalil Herbert at this point. I mean, the guy has gone back-to-back weeks with over 100 yards rushing, and he scored in both of the games. So it's kind of like, why wouldn't you at this point? Like, I do expect this game to be close, so the game script is going to be there for him. He is also somebody I would play over Chuba Hubbard this week. I like, again, it's a hot hand thing. He's been getting touches. Why? It would be really, really what's the word I'm looking for? Questionable, very, very strange if for whatever reason they didn't keep giving the ball to Khalil Herbert just because of how good he's been the last 2 weeks.
For sure. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously we just said Green Bay's playing for a lot to get into the playoffs. Jordan Love is probably really playing for his contract at this point. So who are you starting on the Green Bay side of the ball?
I think the one for sure player that you got to play is Jaden Reed, because he has been the guy for Jordan Love, especially with Christian Watson out. I think Christian Watson is still going to be out for this game. I haven't looked up his practice status, but it feels like, I mean, he did a little bit of a workout before the Sunday night game last week against Minnesota. They showed that on the TV broadcast. So it sounds like he's kind of getting close or ramping up to get back, but Jaden Reed's the only like wide receiver that I feel comfortable with. Aaron Jones, you're probably starting too, just because they got to run the ball at some point, and they looked really good last week running the ball. And Chicago has been better. They've been leaky a little bit the last couple weeks.
Yep.
Run. So you're probably starting him, but then it comes down to Jordan Love and then Tucker Kraft, who has also been like a great pickup if you've been needing a tight end. Like, you lost Mark Andrews, lost TJ Hawkinson. I don't really feel great about either of these guys. You're probably going to play them because
you don't have a choice.
Right, like, you probably are going to play them, but I wouldn't feel super great about it. It feels gross starting those two this week if you've got to.
For sure. It says Christian Watson practiced in a limited fashion on Wednesday, but he needs to make significant progress to be able to play on Sunday. His last time in week 4, when he did come back from his hamstring originally, he only played 46% of the snaps in that game. So that could also be, a factor of, if he is playing, how much is he actually going to be on the field? Is he more of a decoy? He saw only 4 targets in that game. So that would be something to consider as well.
I mean, Green Bay has shown no matter who's injured, first game back, they're limited. Aaron Jones, and that's the other thing too. Then with Jaden Reed, is he going to be limited? Like, that's just how Green Bay does things. So Christian Watson is probably outside of that Jordan Addison, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley tier.
Yeah, I wouldn't start him unless you had to. I mean, missed 4 weeks, right? You don't want to risk him missing the rest of the playoffs by pushing him too hard.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to watch. Next, we start moving into these NFC East matchups. Talked about this earlier. We had Dallas at Washington. Dallas clinches the 2 spot with a win. They follow the 5 if they lose and Philly wins, or 3 with a loss and a Detroit win and a Philly loss. So really, they want to win, right? It gives you that second spot. You have until the NFC Championship, maybe, if San Francisco falls the rest of the way, you have home field advantage. This is a big one. And they're playing Washington. Washington has the 2 spot in the draft right now. And with a loss, they keep that spot. So you've got to imagine that they want to lose this game. They're starting over fresh next year. Sounds like Ron Rivera's out. I think I've talked about this before. My sister works for the Commanders, and she has eaten lunch at the table next to Ron Rivera a couple times in the last month or so. And she said there's no man that looked more stressed before Thanksgiving, and then kind of all these rumors came out that he's probably gone at the end of the year, and now he doesn't look as stressed anymore. So it looks like he's accepted that he's moving on. So man, are you trusting anyone in Washington, or do you trust? I don't even know if I trust that they're going to even start their starters in this one.
No, it sounds like they've already committed to Sam Howell starting the game again. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory, I think.
We'll really know, like, if Terry McLaurin has a sit or something like that, then we'll really know which way this game's going to go. Dallas, right? I mean, they want to win, so your only hope with Dallas is that they don't get up 45-0 in the first quarter and then sit everybody. But Dak, CD, Tony Pollard, Jake Ferguson, those guys are all starts, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dallas defense might be start of the week this week again.
Too bad it's week 18, and some people needed them in week 17.
Yeah,
but
that's true. That is true. Moving on, we got a pointless game. Denver at the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas is at the 11th draft spot. Denver's at 14. You start Tay if you're, right? I mean, I think that's the only one. Josh Jacobs mispracticed again. Can't imagine they push him. They're pushing him to play too hard. Cortland Sutton's dealing with an injury. You got Jarrett Stidham playing for them in a revenge game. We're playing that narrative right now.
Gosh.
Let's go.
Can I just say real quick? If people, I really hope that people see that Jarrett Stidham is no better than what Russ was doing for the Broncos.
Yeah.
It was dink and dunk the entire game. The one touchdown that they scored, sure, it was a decent throw from Stidham because he's on the run and he hits little Jordan Humphrey on the run. But that little Jordan Humphrey does he makes 3 Chargers miss. I really hope that people I'm starting to sympathize a little bit with Russ at this point. I know it wasn't great with Russ, but Jarrett Stidham wasn't anything better than what Russ and the Broncos were already doing.
That's true. Russ to the Vikings next year, is that what we were pulling for?
Get the heck out of here.
I've seen those rumors. They've been scaring me a little too much. I hope that does not happen. Javonte Williams, Zamir White, any interest in either of those two? I feel like I'm more interested in Zamir White than Javonte, but I would like to hear your take on that.
No, I'm definitely more interested in Zamir White. The guy has been pretty good lately with the touches that he's been getting. Javonte, though, probably a different story. He's not really one that I'm considering at all.
Yeah, that's kind of Cortland Sutton. If he plays, probably the only wide receiver you want to touch on that side of the ball. But he's one I feel like there is that touchdown upside, and he's the guy that you've kind of been riding, as a flex option probably this whole year. So he's the only one I would consider. Anyone else on this team? All right.
Nope. Let's move on.
Perfect. We got another NFC East matchup. Philly at the Giants. Like I said earlier, Philly could get the 2 seed with a win and a Dallas loss. If they lose, right, they stay at 5. Giants are currently the 5th overall pick. This next year, they'll have an interesting choice coming up, right? You're starting all the Eagles players, though. You're starting Hurts, Swift. You're starting AJ Brown. I'd probably start Dallas Goedert and Devonta Smith as well. Do you have any gripes with that?
The only gripe isn't really even a gripe. It's just more so they are guys that you just have to play because you look a fool if you don't.
Yeah. Saquon says he wants to be back in New York next year, so I would assume he plays.
False. That's just because he knows he can get the bag with the Giants. That's the only thing.
So I'm assuming he plays. The only other one is Darius Slayton. He's 5 catches and 40 yards for $200,000. One of those incentives we talked about. So any interest in Darius Slayton, trying to chase the bag with them this week? Or are you they're playing the Eagles, I don't want to touch it. Good for him if he gets it.
Well, the Eagles have been a pretty plus matchup for wide receivers the entire year.
True.
But at the same time, it's why what is Darius Slayton going to give you that is so much better than a Jordan Madison, Amari Cooper, or even with their quarterback situation, right? That's what I'm looking at.
No, I agree. I don't think from a fan's perspective, I don't think I'm going to chase it. I haven't looked at, I don't think his line is out yet, but if they put it at 42 yards, I might, throw a little coin on that to see if he gets that over. Seattle at Arizona. Seattle is in with a win and a Green Bay loss. Arizona is in the 4 spot right now.
They want to lose.
They do. But it did sound like Jonathan Gannon came out and said Kyler Murray is for sure the quarterback for 2024. So I would assume Kyler's out there. I would assume, I would assume their starters are out there for Arizona, right? I think they want to lose, but at the same time, the players want to play. The players want to win. So it's one of those interesting ones. Ken Walker, you're starting in this one, right? Arizona's run game has been abysmal. DK Metcalf, I think he's one of those guys that, we talk about every week. Oh, how's it gonna? But he's kind of the one that you're starting for Seattle. Kyler, if he's playing, I would start James Conner, Trey McBride as well. The question then is Geno Smith. Do you have any interest in him this week? The thing with Geno is you might not have a choice, right? The two other quarterback. If you have 3 quarterbacks in your roster, might be Patrick Mahomes and Matt Stafford, who are both out this week. So you might have to go with Geno. Do you like the matchup for Geno this week? How do you feel if you do have a choice?
Geno is very much like Baker for me this week. Like I would still take CJ Stroud, but if you're looking at like Geno Smith, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, I might say like go take Nick Mullins. Like honestly, because I just don't feel great about any of those 3 quarterbacks this week. And like Geno is, he's got the plus matchup, but the problem is so does Ken Walker, right?
Yeah.
And they've not needed Geno Smith to be the guy. So
Ken Walker is a pluser matchup.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? Knowing Seattle, that they might just go, we're going to run the ball as much as we possibly can and not get cute with this one. Just control the clock, put up points on the ground because we can. So do you have any interest then in JSN or Tyler Lockett?
No, I've been probably, I shouldn't say like public enemy, but like I've had like zero interest in these Seattle wide receivers like for the past like 4 weeks because I'm just like, you can't tell who's going to be the guy. One week it's Tyler Lockett, the other is DK Metcalf. Then you got JSN somehow, some way like sprinkling in. You're just kind of like, man, it's just tough to pick. It's tough to pick. I don't really have I just don't feel great about JSN or Lockett because I don't want to put the stress of like, wow, I'm really banking on JSN and Tyler Lockett this week because if they don't produce, who else is going to produce then on my bench?
For sure. And then any interest with no Hollywood in any of these Cardinals wide receivers?
Heck no.
Yep, that's why I am too. Like I think Kyler could put up 30 this week, and they don't have a single wide receiver put up more than 10. That's that's the way the week could go. And even if they do have a wide receiver, you could say, "Ooh, Michael Wilson's probably the one who will get it done." If Kyler's throwing touchdowns, but we have no idea, right? We talk about JSN, Lockett, and DK being ahead, like a headache. Yeah, this Cardinals wide. If you're trying to pick between those guys, that's way more of a headache. Moving on to another NFC West matchup. The Rams at the 49ers. 49ers have the 1 seed locked up. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The Rams are either in the 6th or 7th spot. Both teams are for sure resting some big players in this one. Rams resting Matt Stafford, Kupp, and Kyren Williams. So far, 49ers resting Brock Purdy and CMC. Which, I don't blame him for resting Brock Purdy after what happened last year, right? That's the last thing you want is your quarterback is out. But it'll be interesting. Debo says the starters are playing. I said this earlier. But, then the next day they said they're not starting Purdy. So it'll be interesting to see if Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle play. I'd probably be interested in still starting them. Even with Sam Darnold at the quarterback spot, just knowing the way that Kyle Shanahan, runs this offense. If they do play, but that's something you're for sure going to have to monitor. So I don't want to spend too much time on that just because there's a chance none of those 3 even play. But what I do want to ask you, so Puka's playing. You're starting Puka, right? I would assume at this, even with Carson Wentz, but then the rest are DeMarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Tyler Higbee, and then either Ronnie Rivers or Royce Freeman. Are you interested in any of those 5, or are you just like not even going to try there? Not going to go for the waiver wire pickup with any of those?
I'm not. It's Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Like we got to remember, it's not Matt Stafford, it's Carson Wentz. So like, it is just Puka Nacua for me. Like I agree.
I'm not gonna try and get cute with that. Alrighty, we'll move on. We got 2 matchups left. We got Kansas City at the Chargers. When the NFL made the schedule at the beginning of the year, they were hoping that this would be a big time matchup.
Yep.
But it is not. The Chargers are in position for the 6th pick, and Kansas City gets the 3 seed no matter what. Mahomes is already out. Other starters are likely not to play. Travis Kelce is, I think he's close to another 1,000-yard season is where he's at. I think that's what Andy Reid said when he was asked a question about him. So Kelce is the one that hasn't been talked about. But do you have any interest in anyone in this game? Like, if Pacheco's out, are you starting CEH? Are you starting, I don't know, Rashee Rice plays, are you starting him? I mean, and then on the other side of the ball, Austin Eckler is really the only one we've looked at from the Chargers, but he hasn't been great. Josh Palmer, maybe. Is there anybody that you're like, if they're playing, you need to start them this week in this matchup?
I feel like the only one is CEH. Right, because I would assume that Pacheco is going to be out. I would assume that Rashee Rice is going to be out. So I really do think that CEH is then the only Chiefs player.
Yep.
Chargers player, he probably going to play Eckler because
this is his. We talked about with some other guys, like Zeke, like showing what they got left for the offseason. I feel like this is a big one for Eckler just to show, hey, I got a little burst left, right? Because it's kind of looked like it's gone downhill very quickly for him. But yeah, probably the running backs. But yeah, I'm not going to try and pick from one of these wide receivers between Ethan Stick and what's the other? Is it Chad Henne?
It is Blaine Gabbert.
Blaine Gabbert. Yeah, I'm not gonna try and pick there. I'm gonna hope for the touchdown on that side for CEH or Austin Eckler, just ugly his way to fantasy relevance. And then this last matchup, Sunday Night Football. Buffalo at Miami. If you're in Week 18 championship, you are hoping that your entire team is made up of Buffalo and Miami players, because winner wins the AFC East. Miami is the 6th place team with a loss, and Buffalo could potentially miss the playoffs with a loss, and if Jacksonville and Pittsburgh win. So that would be huge. Yeah, the winner I think gets the 2nd seed. I think it's the 2nd seed if you win. So that is, you go from full home field advantage to playing all road games, depending
or
on
out altogether.
Altogether, depending on who wins this. You're starting Josh Allen. You're starting Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Raheem Mostert is banged up in this one.
I wonder if Jalen Waddle's even playing because he's dealing with
that's right. I forgot Jalen Waddle's hurt. So Tyreek Hill is, still banged up. I think he's still wearing a boot around when he's not on the field. So very interesting. Mostert would be one to watch. If Mostert's out, I would say you start Devon Achane in this one. After what we saw last week, knowing that, he's got to see. But Achane's dealing with an injury as well. So, right, I think we can talk about all this. But Miami's banged up. I mean, they just are. That's just the way it is. Stephon Diggs, that's the guy I really wanted to talk about. We talked about on our bus video because he's been so disappointing. So unbelievably disappointing. But I feel like you got to start him this week no matter what. Are you on the same page, or are you trying to figure out, somewhere else to go?
I mean,
knowing what's on the line.
His last 7 games
has been awful.
6.4, 6.7, 19.4, 6.4, 8.8, 7.9, and 7.1.
Oh, so gross. That's disgusting.
I feel like we've been saying he's one that you just got to ride out. Why is it going to be this week? Why is it going to be this week? Like the difference between Derrick Henry and Stephon Diggs is that Henry will still pop up every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Diggs, quite literally, since Joe Brady came in, has done nothing. I'm borderline out of patience. Diggs is cemented into that Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison tier. Like he is cemented.
Would you start him over those guys still? Amari Cooper with PJ Walker, D Hop this week, Calvin Ridley. Would you start him over those guys? I feel like I would. I feel like I'd give it one more shot.
But you probably will, but you have to know that the worst is probably going to come.
Yeah, like if you're hoping for a Sunday night miracle, you're probably not going to get it.
You're probably not going to get it. Because again, too, like he is very like you'd look a fool if you bench him and he pops off, right? So you probably still play him, but just know you're probably not going to win your matchup because you have Stephon Diggs in.
Yeah. James Cook, I would assume you're starting this one.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Tua, are you starting Tua in this one? I would assume just with all the quarterbacks out, I think
you probably have to.
You're probably going to have to, and it's probably not a bad matchup to start him in, right? Knowing it's a must-win game, knowing that Buffalo's probably going to put up points. And then the last two, Gabe Davis, Dalton Kincaid. Any interest in those guys?
Nope.
That's where I'm at. Yeah, I wouldn't touch it. But yeah, if you're in the Week 18 matchup, you are hoping that your team is littered with Buffalo and Miami players so that you don't have to worry if the teams are actually going to play and if it's going to be a decent game, because this one should be. Alrighty, Ty. We are going to do our last regular season full fade right now. I will apologize to our viewers. My transitions have been absolutely terrible today. They've just been awful. I'm going to be rejected as the host from here on out. I know we've taken a little break from the full fellas fade, whatever you want to call it. But for Week 18, me and Ty decided, for those of you who did watch through it, even though you don't have a game going on this week, congratulations to you. So we're going to give you a little bit of fun at the end. Tyler, why don't you start us off? Who are you taking for the fellas full fade?
I am taking the guy that I am very much enthralled with this week. It's Devin Singletary, higher than 66.5 rushing yards against the Colts over the last 4 weeks. Indianapolis is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 9th in rushing yards allowed. They have also allowed the third most receptions to running backs the last 4 weeks. And if you're like, well, that's 4 weeks, what about the most recent games? Over the last 2 weeks, they are 5th, 6th, can't count, 6th in rushing yards allowed, and the third most receptions. This is the perfect matchup for Devin Singletary, who can dominate on the ground, who can get involved in the receiving game. I was kind of intrigued by the combined yards, but I was like, yeah, you know what? Just give me the rushing yards. So Devin Singletary higher than 66.5 rushing yards for me.
Locked in. All righty. You talked about a team that was bad against the run, right? In Indianapolis. That's what you're going with. I'm going with a team that is the worst against the run, the Arizona Cardinals, on the season and over the last 4 weeks. Oh, I actually lied. They're not worse over the last 4 weeks. They're 5th over the last 4 weeks because they played decently last week. But I'm going to take Kenneth Walker against the Arizona Cardinals, higher than 66.5 rushing yards. Same line as you, actually. Cardinals are giving up over 119 yards per game on the season. They're giving up over 115 yards per game over the last 5 weeks. And we talked about earlier, Seattle, you know what? When Kenneth Walker's healthy, they like to run the ball with Kenneth Walker. And I got to imagine in Arizona, in a must-win game, they're going to rely on what they're good at. So I am going to take Kenneth Walker higher than 66.5 rushing yards. Got that locked in. But yeah, that pretty much does it for us. If you are playing, like I said before, a Week 18 championship, and you're like, oh no, I have no one to start, that's 100% on you. Change that next year. All right.
Just be better.
If you do not have a fantasy matchup this week and you listen to this entire podcast, and just drop that comment down there. I will give you your claps. That's amazing of you. Thank you for supporting us. We love to hear it. We love to see it. If you're following us on YouTube, thank you. If you're not, subscribe there, hit those notifications. If you're listening to the audio podcast, thank you there. And if you're wondering what comes next, we will have playoff episodes coming out for both Underdog Pick'ems, talking there. We're going to start off-season content here, dynasty content, draft content, right? We got the whole gauntlet coming up for you guys. So we're going to be nonstop. We hope that you stick with us throughout the off season. We hope that we can continue to entertain you. But yeah, Ty, anything that you want to add for the people?
If you like football, this is your place to be, because we talk football all the time.
Nonstop, baby. You can follow me at CamLawFFF on the X and Tyler at Tyler_Plath over there as well. I know we still have it looking at like Twitter, but it is the X now. You probably still call it Twitter because I do as well. But yeah, go win those championships if you haven't already. If you already did, congratulations. And if you're like me and got in the third place game, I feel your pain. Alrighty, with that, deuces, and we'll see you next week.
Deuces.